Hi, nice to meet everybody. So we'll give it here a minute. I'll introduce everyone on the call. I will go through our topics, what we're going to talk through today. We'll just hang back here for about another minute or two. We have a couple people joining the webinar now. So once we get started, I will go and do the intro. So just please stand by. And if anyone has any kind of technical issues, anything, can't hear anyone, anything like that, just you could send a private note to myself. I'll ensure that you guys can we'll get you involved. If there's any questions throughout the presentation, you can wait to the end if you'd like. We'll hold about 10-15 minutes for any QA. But of course, if there's any burning questions throughout, please just send them in the chat. I'll ask our, our expert panelists here um, to pause, and we'll kind of bring those questions in. Again, the goal of this is to keep it conversational. So this is an open forum. As questions trickle in, my goal is to introduce them throughout the presentation. So please share them via the chat. They're going to come to me privately, and then I will introduce them to our panelists. So we're at 12:02 Eastern time. I will give it here another 30 seconds to a minute, and then we will get started. Thank you for your patience. All right, so we're going to get started. So just to give a briefing on the presentation and what we're going to be covering today. So in this webinar, we have our industry experts here to explain how Agentic Conversational AI enhances agent productivity, maximizes collections with 24/7 automation. All with that being said, to ensure compliance, deliver significant cost savings, and again, they're going to join us today to show us how AI and human collaboration is happening and how it's ultimately kind of transformed their enterprise collection strategy. So, without further ado, I'm just going to give a little intro on each of our panelists. So, we have Kris Brumley. She is the president and COO of Revenue Enterprises. As president and COO of Revenue Enterprises, Kris Brumley is a collaborative partner within the executive team and a leader for operational functions across the organization. Kris productively shares visions, drives innovation, and supports those around her in a way that elevates them and forces continuous improvement in results. She has helped create a supportive environment for clients, resulting in 98% client retention and 65% NPS score for all clients and 75% for top clients by revenue. Kris possesses an MBA in data analytics and has 25 years of experience in the healthcare industry, with 19 specifically in revenue cycle. She brings a wealth of customer service experience to her role and has worn many hats at Revenue Enterprises, including Director of Business Development, EBO Division Director, and VP of Client Experience Management. In her personal life, Kris is busy outside of work as inside. She values spending time with her family, enjoys fishing, hiking, traveling, and interior decorating and design. Welcome, Kris. And then on the other side, we have Scott Autry, CEO of Darnell Recovery Inc. So Scott Autry is the president and CEO of Darnell Inc., which has just recently celebrated 50 years in business. So congrats. He has 22 years of in-depth first and third-party collection experience. With his leadership, Darnell has become a premier agency in the Southeast banking market. As a core principle that drives his business and his life, Scott believes in offering accountability with a helping hand. Scott has several academic degrees and certifications in the technical and business administration world, fancies himself a lifetime student, and enjoys sharpening his language acquisition skills in his spare time. His highest earthly joy and greatest achievement are his three children, Titus, Gabriella, and Shepard. Welcome, Scott.
Hey guys, nice to be here.
And from the Skit Scott, we have Vaibhav Gupta. He's our director of product and delivery. So again, he'll represent on the Skit side any kind of technical things, any kind of questions specific to maybe Skit.ai that do come up. So again, welcome, Vaibhav. And again, we're excited to see your expertise here.
Thank you, Joe. Nice to meet you, everyone.
Great. So let's just dive into it. So the main topic and overarching theme that we're going to be looking at and discussing today is going to be moving away from legacy tech, right? Embracing agentic conversational AI and contact centered, right? How has AI kind of evolved over time? So before we kind of see where AI is today or where we believe AI is going, we want to look at the past, right? We want to look at what was happening prior, right? What was in collection or debt collection agencies prior to AI kind of making this big movement over the last few years. So ultimately balancing the old and the new. So first question, I'll hand it over to Scott. How did you decide whether to keep your existing systems or invest in AI? What was your journey like? Not necessarily coming and joining and working with Skit, um, but why AI in general? What made you focus and go down that path and make that decision?
Yep. Well, really, it boiled down to the comparative benefits of a traditional IVR versus the benefits you would gain from AI. As we compared the functionality of both, it boiled down to my agents were spending a ton of time on the phone waiting for connections. And that was money spent where, they were sitting around waiting for a call to connect. I was having to pay for those wait times versus AI, where the AI makes the call, it connects, it handles the disgruntled call. And so looking at traditional IVR versus the AI agent was a no-brainer because it cut down significantly on the time spent by the agent on the call, which obviously freed up agents to do other things. So that was a big comparison from the old way to the new way for me.
Got it. No, it makes sense. And Chris, same question. How did you guys approach AI, right? What was your assessment when it came to, hey, I think it's time for us to go down that path?
Unmute myself. Similar to Scott, a lot of it was just wasted time. Our agents were spending way too much time doing very simple tasks, taking payments, and yeah, sitting on the phone waiting for a connection somewhere. Also, right party contacts, things like that. We were looking for efficiencies. Um, Employment and staffing costs are definitely not going down. We've seen about a 40% increase in the last 5 years, and needed ways to find efficiency being one of the largest line items in our GL. So, but it was a no-brainer. We kind of had to go this direction, and voice technology has expanded so far that we have, a lot of times it's hard for the consumer to even tell that it's
Mhm.
voice technology when we're using that specifically. And then
Yeah.
we also use AI for some sorting and segmentation and things like that were previously manual processes. So there's AI going on all over the place. And I think if you're not adopting it, I think you pretty quickly are going to find that you're becoming a little bit obsolete unless you're in a very niche environment, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, and like I said, I agree, right? I think a lot of times, especially when it comes to IVR systems, right, they kind of do one functionality okay. AI kind of allows you to expand across the board. So you started to mention it. Was there any focus, and this could be directed towards Kris, was there any focus on AI or any concern that AI wouldn't be able, there was always that feeling that you knew that AI can make the phone call, right? It can make the call, interact with your consumer. Were there any fear to disrupt anything else operationally, right? IVRs really are taking inbound or maybe making an outbound call, and that's kind of it on its limited, and then forwarding that call to the right department. Did you ever feel that AI, you would have any issues or disrupt in any service with having AI introduced to, say, your telephony or payment gateways or CRM systems, or how it's transferred to an agent? Did you foresee any issues there? Have you seen any issues there with AI?
Um, we had a few challenges in the beginning with just the streamlining of the agent. We're on a bit of an older platform. We've customized the heck out of it. We've been on it for 30 years and it keeps advancing, but we are moving to a new SaaS platform next year. And I anticipate some significant improvement with those APIs and things like that. But we've API'd with, or Skit has API'd with our payment portals, our they're in process of APIing with our telephony system. And that is your streamlining things. One of my biggest concerns were screen pops and right party verification so that the agent isn't re-verifying or that they know that this call has been verified when it gets to them. We definitely don't want our consumer experience to be impacted at all by the use of AI. And so there were, I wouldn't call them concerns, but there were things we watched for to make sure we did it right out the gate. Also the information coming back into our system, we definitely didn't want to lose any integrity on work efforts and things like that, that we want to report to our clients and let them know that we've touched this account, you know, this many times at this frequency. We also wanted to make sure that all of our regulatory and compliance standards were being met. There was a lot of homework up front. We have a lot of medical debt. On our bad debt side, we're also have a huge first party presence that we're rolling out right now, but our bad debt presence, we needed to make sure that all of the regulatory requirements were being met, around 777 and PCI compliance, and also then HIPAA compliance. Just needed to make sure that everything was consent. There's continued pressure about the consent to speak with a consumer, and we were running Skit for about, I think, 2 or 3 months before the new ruling came out that voice, or the not really ruling, but the case precedents came out that voice technology is different than automated dialer systems. And so we had to kind of go back and rethink our strategy around consent and how we're approaching that. Just a lot of different considerations. And then again, beyond the voice technology and the IVR and everything else, I also think that just AI in general, you know, Chat GPT, Copilot, those types of things, they've increased my personal productivity probably 20 to 30%. So it's like having 1 1/3 of me around, and I encourage our directors and VPs and everybody else to use it too, because I need more of their brains focused on things that it takes a brain versus an AI process.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like you said, one of the key things, right, for AI in general, and you know, we could say for Skit.ai, is that these systems are all talking to each other, right? You know, there's a lot of companies out there, especially now today, that are building AI voice bots, right? And they all can sound really great, and they could all do some really kind of cool, fascinating things. But I think, you know, ensuring that we can integrate across the board, right, from end to end, from the point it can make or receive a call all the way through to these other points like telephony and payment gateways and CRMs, and your agent transfers are all in place and the reporting is all matching. So you don't miss a beat, right? So way off from our side, from Skit, how do you guys tackle that, right? You're the director here of delivery, and how do you guys weigh these systems, right? How do you look at integrations, customizations versus configurations? When a client comes on board, and obviously we're building out, you know, the best version of the AI voice bot that we can, how heavily do you weigh on things like integrations and payment gateways? Can you just talk to that point?
Yeah. I think Kris and Scott, they touched very important points over there. That, you know, LLMs specifically, they have enabled for us to look into these agentic AI systems as not IVR upwards, you know, more of human backwards. So how close can we get to humans? That is the question now. Instead of, you know, how much ahead of IVR we can get. So LLMs have made that thing possible. And very important points, you know, which we have discussed in this forum today. We want to ensure that the agentic AI systems that we make on top of LLMs, right, they're as close to humans as possible. First thing, they should be able to handle all queries that humans are able to handle today. They should be able to interact with different systems that human agents are interacting today. Let's say it's a CRM system, the payment gateway system. At backend, they might be sending some SMSs or something, right? All of those systems should be integrated on the agentic AI system. It is very much possible that there are many cases in which the call gets transferred to human agents because the agentic AI system is not able to, completely cater that particular call or completely handle that particular call. So we want that this AI system, AI agent is able to pass on the context as well to the human agent who is picking up the call and, receiving the call from the voice bot. During the IVR days, like many years back, that was not possible. IVR was working in isolation to human agents, right? A consumer used to come on the IVR, spend minutes over there, then get transferred to agents, and agents for receiving the call is completely a fresh call, right? But today, these AI systems, they pass on the context. Kris very rightly pointed out. In fact, we are, working with revenue enterprise as well to build a pop-up. And that we are introducing for all systems that we integrate for any of our clients, that a pop-up should be visible in agent's screen, in the same screen, because we do understand that agents can't, juggle between multiple screens. We can't affect their efficacy of operations.
Mhm.
So we want pop-up to appear on the same screen so the context can be transferred to agents. Now, again, this
Mhm.
becomes an important integration that needs to be done. So Joe, to answer your question, overall, as as a delivery, as an implementation function, whenever we work with any client, we want to ensure that all these different pieces are solutioned upon. We want to kind of maximize the value a particular client can get from us. And that would mean saving FTE minutes. That is, in the end, efficiency of how agents are operating. Having the AI agents handle as many queries as possible end to end, because that would completely save a call going to agents, right? Collecting on the voice bot itself, that will increase the overall collections, the top line that any agency or creator is doing with the only human channel. So all of these multiple levers of ROI, I would say, are something that we think backwards on. So these are like 3, 4 ROI levers, and then we start thinking backwards on these levers, and then we arrive on all the integrations that should be enabled to kind of, enable these ROI levers and ROI delivery outcomes.
Understood. No, and again, it makes perfect sense, right? Right now we're discussing kind of that decline of the IVR systems, right? Because they are so one-dimensional, and they're kind of inefficient, right? They're doing one thing, and more or less people you've probably seen humans get frustrated with them, and they just want to speak to a person anyway. Um, but Kris touched on something pretty important, right? It's a question we always get here. It's a question that always comes up: compliance. So Scott, I'll kind of direct this to you. When it comes to compliance, right? The one thing with an IVR is obviously it's pretty straightforward. You call in, the IVR directs the call out. Did you ever see concerns with compliance, right? One of the things that are always getting evaluated with AI is compliance, right? Is it compliant? What have you seen? Right, you've been with us now for a few months, and just in general, when
Right.
you were evaluating AI tools, obviously compliance was important. So what did you need to see to say, hey, like, okay, I'm comfortable with this. I want this to not only direct my calls, but actually interact with my consumers.
The two things that popped up when you asked the question were data security concerns, housing the data, interacting with the data. So you guys passed that with flying colors, but also the bounds within which the AI operates. Would it have a rogue conversation, or would it expose right party contact information to the wrong party? And so testing proved that to be it was no problem. And so those things were big for us. And one thing I wanted to comment about is the integration process you were talking about a minute ago about integrating with payment gateways. You guys did really well there for us. A lot of third-party vendors that we've worked with in the past really just jam the process through to get you up and going, and then solve all the problems after the fact. You guys took a crawl, walk, run approach. It was very meticulous, very thorough, very thought out. And I appreciated that as an owner, because that freed my day up, which is already, completely crammed. And it freed my staff up from doing a lot of double checking, triple checking. And so just to kind of comment on something you said earlier, but yes, data standards, integrity standards, security standards, and then also the bounds within which the AI would have the conversation. That was extremely important for us.
Got it. No, and like you said, it makes sense, right? I mean, data security and compliance are number one things. And whether we're evaluating Skit.ai or just AI in general, I always preach, and we always preach here, that the two metrics you're always looking at is ROI and compliance, right? The
Yeah.
bot has to be compliant. And then the second bit is how ROI can be a number of things, right? How can you get the return on your investment? So we talked about end-to-end collection, right? We talk about the bot receiving a call, making a call, interacting with a consumer, and ultimately being able to take payments. But outside of that, one of the key things, and Wavo started to touch on it, is AHT, right? Average handling time. So
Mm.
one of the things, I'll direct this to Kris here to start, is how do you incorporate AI and human collaboration, right? Right now, can you kind of give us your situation? How are you set up currently? Do you have the bot handling maybe basic issues and humans doing complex ones? Or is it more or less, hey, our AI system is going end to end for everything? Do you have a strategy currently in place that you're utilizing the AI to its best abilities? And then part two of that question is, outside of just say end-to-end collection, are there any other use cases that you see where, hey, AI is currently working for me now, or hey, I see where AI can work in the future?
A little of both.
Okay.
We, again, we started it on our third party work with an outbound, to supplement our dialer and, reach out to consumers more, because the dialer can't take payments. And that was our, we thought, well, why not use the voice technology instead, to where it can at least take payments from the consumer. And I mean, a contact is the most valuable on the third party side. If we have a contact, they need to either make a payment or talk to one of our agents. That's just an unsaid rule in our agency. The last thing we want are abandoned calls or any calls dropping. So it was really important that we had the bot doing the correct activities to take that payment. It was a bit of a challenge out the box to get the same experience from our payment portal as we did from our agents. On our payment portals, the consumer can see where their payment plan is. They can see which accounts are on a payment plan. But the payment plans are completely separate from the account data. They run independently. So if I have a $500 balance in the portal and I set up a $500 payment plan for 5 $100 payments, if I come in and make one $250 payment, my payment plan is going to adjust, but it's not necessarily my payment plan says it's 5 $100 payments, and it's going to draw all 5, whether the consumer made a $250 payment or not.
Mm.
The balance in the portal is going to be correct. That number didn't jive, and so we had to do some extensive work to make sure that the bot was setting up the payment plan correctly in the payment portal, to make sure that it was going to pan out in the end, and that the consumer could see what their current balance was, and that they all spoke with each other and jived on behalf of the consumer. Our agents also needed to be able to see the payment plan. So if that consumer happened to call in and talk to an agent, they needed to be able to see that the accounts were on a payment plan, which accounts, if they had multiple accounts, all of those things had to happen to make sure it was right. So there was kind of a phase 2 for us to make sure that it got beyond just basic taking a payment to let's figure out how to make payment plans work as well. And the bot can now negotiate a payment plan under different guidelines for different clients. It was a bit tricky, but the team absolutely had no problems working with it either. In the future, like I say, we're rolling it out on the early outside or on the first party side on inbound calls for right party verification. And again, to take payments right now through our payment solutions and our IVR, they charge by the minute, and it is a significant amount. It adds up, and people fail out of that IVR a lot. And we pay for when that transfers to an agent for the whole time that the agent is talking to the consumer. So if it, you know, that consumer called in, they tried their account number, they tried their social security, they couldn't connect with the IVR, or they didn't like the balance and they fail out to an agent, and then they talk to an agent for 20 minutes because they're arguing over the balance. I mean, 20 minutes is a crazy handle time. We don't do that often, but if they did, we were paying that whole amount of time, you know, maybe 25, 30 minutes of IVR time on top of the time that we spent for the agent to do that. And that's just crazy. And the IVR is so much, or I'm sorry, the bot is so much more efficient in taking those payments and fails out a lot quicker. And we don't pay once it transfers back into our agent. And it's also a lot more accurate. There's fewer people failing out of the IVR when they're taking a payment. Also, there's other things that it can manage for us. It's asking for validation of the phone number and the address for us, so we don't have to do that manually anymore. I mean, it's cutting our anticipated early efforts or measurements are that it will cut somewhere between 45 and 75 seconds off of every inbound call. And we take 1 million calls or more a year. That is a lot of agent time that we're saving or anticipate saving, and that's conservatively. So it will allow us to grow a lot faster. It's not launched yet. We're starting with a handful of beta clients, but so far testing has been very positive, and your team has been amazing with keeping us current and working with our telephone system. And they were very resistant. In fact, you guys were easy enough to work with that we're considering changing phone vendors because of it, because the phone system folks were so challenging to accept the new technology and work with us to make it happen. Most phone systems aren't that resistant, but these are big players in the market, and they see it as competition, is my belief, and have been pretty resistant.
Gotcha. No, and Scott, would you like to add before I kind of jump in?
We were speaking of cutting down on agent time for sure.
Yeah.
I noticed on an average for all of my agents, I gained 3 to 4 hours of productivity per day. It was just a lot of wasted time sitting on an IVR. And so being able to redirect those agents to do the higher level tasks, the bot, the way we're using it right now, is doing a lot of the repetitive, not lower level tasks, but I would say mundane tasks. And it does very well at it, you know, verifying information, taking payments, cutting down on agent time, cutting down on people calling in curious about who we are and hanging up, wasting agent time doing that. And that's allowed me to redirect my agents and actually pour into their lives to train them to be more specialized in certain areas. We are in the court system quite a bit in the state of Georgia, and that's allowed me to pour into their professional career and train them to do higher level, more intensive tasks. And so hopefully one day end to end, the bot will handle some of those other things. For instance, we have the bot text consumers after it makes a call and there's no one that picks up. So that's a major kind of two-step process for us. It's carving out what a human agent would do. And so I've been really happy with the results so far.
Yeah, no, and one thing we always kind of preach and what we want to see beyond just say an AI voice bot is that this is an omni-channel, right? The goal is that we're seamlessly integrating across the board, both internally within your agency, right? With your agents, and then ultimately across all your systems. And then we give you a platform or a tool that you're able to utilize a number of services, right? Inbound, outbound, email, texting, chatbot. These should all be kind of seamlessly working together. So this is really good to hear. And Wave, what I would like to hear from you then, right, from the Skit side. You know what, we talk a lot about, and both Kris and Scott talked a lot about collecting payments and downstream payments, but they also discussed other values, right? Like reducing our AHT, or average handling time, being able to put their agents on maybe some more critical tasks to help boost their productivity, cutting down on just telephony cost in general by using an IVR system. So how do you look at ROI, right? You know, obviously we could always look at downstream payments, but ultimately, how do you envision, how do you define ROI driven from not just Skit AI, but just, I would say in general, from any or from all AI type systems or AI agents?
Yeah, that's a very good point, and I think Kris and Scott laid down everything for me to build upon. Um, I think for us as Skit, we have realized this that we can't stop the bot development at any point of time. Like Kris rightly pointed out, it can be phase one, two, three. The phases will keep going on, right? Because we will keep studying, we'll keep realizing that consumers are asking for something new. Okay, the bot can handle that new query, or even an existing query can be extended, and the bot can handle that particular query in a much more, extensive manner, and then send to agents, or not at all send to agents, right? So overall, the bot development can keep happening, right? And that is what we have realized, and that's what we are doing now. That we are not stopping the bot development, we're not stopping the training of our bots at any point of time. We have both manual and automated systems. Manually, we review calls. An automated system that we have is a bot on a bot. We call it imposter QA/QC system internally, but an imposter QA/QC system is basically an automated bot which runs on our AI agents, let's say a voice bot. So that bot is running on the voice bot, analyzing each and every consumer call, finding out what happened in that consumer call. Was that call in scope? Did the bot handle that call properly? Was that call out of scope? A particular query came in which the bot is not designed to handle. Was the frequency of that query on a month-on-month basis, on a week-on-week basis, and so on, right? And that gives us insight that, okay, this is a query which has been, shining on the heat map, and this is what we need to pick up and develop on the voice bot. And that, iterative cycle of consistent voice bot development or any AI agent development keeps on adding value. So again, the point which I touched earlier, thinking value backwards, we keep adding queries, we keep expanding the voice bots or any AI agents in scope coverage so that these AI agents can handle as many queries as possible. We reduce human involvement as much as possible. And even if a human is getting involved, we ensure that they are starting from the point where the conversation was left by the consumer with any AI agent, and not repeating everything that already the consumer has discussed with an AI agent, because that is a very bad CX. With everything with the ROI, even CX is an ROI. Although we can't put a dollar value to CX, but CX is definitely a very big ROI contributor. So that's how we think, Joe, that we need to iteratively develop the bot. Internally, we have many systems, like I explained, that enable us to develop these bots. To give you a few examples, uh, with one of our, health or an RCM company, we also realized that, there were many consumers coming in asking about the insurance details, asking to update insurance details, because maybe the insurance on paper is not the latest insurance, right? They need to update the insurance details that they have, and so on. They want to update the demographic details, so on. Now, the voice agent which was deployed was not very capable of, precisely capturing the insurance address, insurance numbers, and those alphabets and words, I would say, because that's difficult to capture on voice for an AI agent or even for a human, right? So we introduced an extension to our voice bot. We introduced the platform, which was a mobile-friendly screen, a platform. A link used to get sent with an SMS, and they could, click on that link, log into, just arrive on a portal on their cell phones and update the details of insurance. And that gets sent back to the voice bot, and the voice bot sends that everything back to the CRM system. So in a way, an extension was developed to the voice bot to enable handling of this particular query as well, which is like updating insurance detail, demographic, and so on. So the overall idea I'm trying to paint over here is that we keep an open mind that as many queries that a consumer is posing, as many as of them can be handled. That is the optimal scenario, and that optimal scenario will never be achieved. It will be like a consistent iterative development that needs to happen. So Yeah.
No, no, I agree. Again, two really, really unique things I heard there were one, the use cases are kind of endless, right? Now with these new LLM stacks, you can kind of delve outside the scope of just collect payment, which is obviously really important. But there's a number of things you could do, right? You can program or build these bots to almost do anything. And the second, which is I think you call it an imposter bot. Yeah, you basically have a bot auditing a bot. That's really cool, right? You can only do so many calls and you get thousands of scenarios. The fact you kind of have this screening happening in the background from both a compliance standpoint, um, and also too just a use case standpoint, you're able to kind of build out scenarios that you might not even have thought of without it. So really cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So, just
Yeah.
to add over there, the things with LLMs, since the advent of GPT LLMs, making the voice bot and adding more queries on the voice bot has become easier. But coming back to Scott's point on compliance, ensuring that those queries or the bot design is not hallucinating, not deviating from what it has been designed into, that has become difficult. So the problem statement has reversed. You can keep adding more design and more handling of different queries on these AI agents, but ensuring that there are strict guardrails that don't get breached has become the problem statement. So that bot on bot is something that enables us to test like thousands of calls for a particular scenario, kind of harden our AI agents to ensure that nothing, nothing kind of exits those guardrails set in. No jailbreak is happening in a way, right? And that is how we ensure compliance.
I understand. No, it makes sense, right? You need to at least have certain protocols in place. Otherwise, an LLM bot can go down almost any tangent you can imagine, right? And obviously, the main framework is that it can't break certain rules, right? But no, really cool. I mean, again, it makes sense, and it's something that's going to be constantly growing and evolving over time, which is important. So we do have a question. This is not directed to anyone specific. Scott, Kris, you guys can give your takes. It's going to be more specific to your business itself. And then wave up if you want to chime in afterward, you can give kind of Skits AI's kind of point of view on it because it's regarding compliance, right? So in consent. So the question was, can someone explain how they are obtaining consent to contact the consumer using an AI agent? So again, I'll let Skit, Kris, you guys can kind of chime in from your point of view on that, and then wave off. We can kind of give our regulation of because we get this question all the time, right? From a consent standpoint, how do we handle it, and what are the options that we can provide if, say, consent isn't there or so forth. So first, I'll hand it to Scott and Kris. You guys can kind of give your evaluation on it, and then we'll hand it out to wave off to answer.
I'm happy to jump in with a brief explanation. Our clients, we worked with all of our clients to, again, because we're medical, all the patients sign a medical consent up front when they register for any visit, or even laboratory and all of those good things. So, we worked with our clients to add language. Most clients have some language in there around bad debt collections and, dialers and all of that good stuff. It's been out for a long time since the TCPA came out and all of those types of things. So we worked with our clients to gain that consent through there. And then also as a kind of a Band-Aid fix, the Skit team helped us develop a upfront, basically pre-recorded voice message to ask for consent upfront, both short-term and long-term, so that would pick up the consent from the consumer and feed it back to us. I will say that was much less effective. As soon as a patient is asked for consent to speak with an automated voice technology, they quite often hung up. But it was better than nothing, and it allowed us to at least gather some consent data.
I echo the same. We work really hard with our clients. We have a highly controlled market, FDIC, OCC, and we had to work really hard with our clients to make sure that everything is on the up and up. And so when we receive the information, we're not having to do too much re-verification in that way.
Yeah, no, and Wave, before I let you kind of jump in there, yeah, I mean, how we kind of focus on every client is we speak to them more on a creditor by creditor basis or client by client basis, right? So every language could be different. So sometimes it's not overarching, and Wave will talk to, and Kris actually brought it up. We do have other methods there that are built in to combat that, right? If you do have some quote unquote maybe gray area and you're unsure, of course, we'll help you try to get that consent if needed. But the second bit is we do have solutions in place that you can optimize and use. They have gotten more effective of late, but yes, I remember that, back last April, right? We initiated this pre-recorded message to gain consent. And though it was the legal, proper, easy thing to do, if you didn't know if you had consent or not have consent, you had more drop off, right? Human nature. If there's just a recording asking yes or no for this, they're going to drop off. But over time, like anything, just like even AI calls, the more you do it, the more people become accustomed to it, and the more they can actually continue the conversation. So, the more frequency of using these kind of things, just like AI bots, that a couple of years ago you'd say, who would listen to an AI bot? Now it's happening, right? It's almost more frequent than a human calling you or interacting with you. Um, so yeah, so if you want, to give a little briefing on, Skit's angle on it, how we approach it, because like I mentioned in the beginning of the webinar, right? The two main components we look at, ROI, compliance, right? We have to be compliant. There can't be any gray or any issues there. And again, we really work hard with our clients to ensure we're delivering a product across the board, that's ensuring compliance and the proper consent and all of that. So if you want to give kind of your take on consent and how we're approaching it from a delivery product standpoint.
Yeah. So as Skit, we don't give any legal advice, but we are, having a complete suite of offerings to kind of tackle any type of consent challenges you might have. Kris pointed out one particular example, in which we started with a pre-recorded voice and then moved to an artificial voice. We have many other offerings in our suite of solutions in which we can tackle the kind of consent you have for your files, right? So based on the type of consent that you have, we can have those solutions available across all AI agents to find the best fit. Now, very rightly said by Kris and Scott that efficacies might change from one solution to other solution, because that's the human nature on the other side that eventually gets adopted to. I mean, the adoption phase is there, but the starting point can be different. Maybe with adoption, which again, the adoption phase might also be different. But towards the steady state, the performance does improve and we reach a steady state over there.
Got it. No, and again, it makes sense. We need to ensure that the consent's there. Like I said, we don't pretend like that we can we give any kind of legal advice or anything like that. But like you said, we built out a suite of products to help counter ensure any client can work with us. Whether that's just using different mediums like SMS or email or chatbot, etc. To actually adding specific types of prompts and things of that nature. And again, this is constantly changing and growing, right? And just know we're always in the background making improvements and changes to ensure we adhere to any of the latest guidelines and compliance rules and laws that are put out there, right? Whether it's on a federal or state by state basis. So just know that's constantly evolving over time as well. So one of the things we keep talking about, we're talking about efficiency and cost savings and things of that nature. So Scott, I'll direct this to you. I mean, as far as efficiency, right? We hit on a number of things. We hit on AI can reduce some automated repetitive task. It helps bring down wait times. When a agent receives a call from the AI bot, maybe 30 seconds of that call is already completed, that the bot verified the user, et cetera, and the agent can pick up on the conversation. What
Or
are some of the other things that you've seen, right? Some things I've always heard from clients is just simple things like reduction in training costs and hiring and things like that. Has these kind of cost savings allowed you to expand your business, right? Have you looked into other avenues like, hey, now I can do X or expand here because of having now AI in place to help, again, alleviate some of these kind of minor costs?
yeah, so speaking just from an HR standpoint, it eliminates payroll and
Yeah.
payroll taxes, um, which can be a killer for a small business. And so offering consistency for an agent, a bot. Um, Training costs obviously are reduced because the bot is there. One of the things that I've faced in the past especially when trying to bring on new clients, it's really an old mindset in the client because AI is still burgeoning. The client is concerned about how many agents you can put on the task. And as a smaller agency, and we've actually reduced our staff size because of AI. I think that's just a natural byproduct. How much you reduce that is up to you. But one of the things we faced in talking with potential clients was, well, how big is your staff? That is no longer a talking point. And it kind of exposes the fact that the person you're talking to doesn't have a pulse on the AI market. And so it's turned our business from being able to bring on certain clients and ramp up staff in a very uh, cost intensive way to we could bring on literally national banks at this point, and I wouldn't lose sleep over that. So the reduction of training cost, turnaround time. We've joked around, Joe, in the past. The AI never has a bad day. It doesn't forget to make its coffee. It doesn't get sick. It's very predictable, very consistent. And so, just from an HR standpoint, it is a massive, massive help.
Got it. No, and yeah, I've always said that, right? I've always joked now with every client and anyone I've talked to. Yeah, the bot doesn't get upset. The bot doesn't. You could yell at the bot, curse at the bot. Uh,
Right.
gonna interact the same way, right? It's not going to change. You don't have to retrain a bot. We keep talking about new use cases and different ways we could utilize AI, and yeah, you train it once, it will never go off that, right? We don't have to have multiple training seminars and go through things and they don't quit and all these kind of things that you kind of take for granted. And again, it allows you to expand your business. So Kris, do you echo the same feelings, right? I know obviously we've expanded with the types of use cases that we've done specifically for you, but as far as just being able to bring on more clients, have you seen that AI just in general has really kind of helped with that case?
Um, not yet.
Mhm.
It hasn't allowed us to bring on new clients, but um, just our embrace of technology in general is definitely there. And this is one more demonstration that of our um flexibility and agility to adopt new technology that makes us more efficient and more cost effective. We've got a couple clients where again, our operating costs between patient statements and people have gone through the roof, and
Mhm.
it's adopt more efficient ways or raise prices, and so we're definitely at risk of losing clients if we don't adopt some of these technologies that are much more efficient and effective. And to your point, I I hope that I'm not the only one that have experienced an agent kind of maybe not going rogue, but maybe missing hitting the mute button when they express their
Right.
opinions when they're talking to a consumer. And
Right.
that never goes well with the client. And the bot never does that. It never speaks inappropriately to a consumer. It never, and so that also means a lot to us. They're a lot more consistent and a lot more dependable than people. They're never going to call in sick. We're never going to have to worry about them not being available. It's just always there.
Yeah.
Joe, I thought of something as well. This helps you stay competitive in the market. Like Kris was saying, employee costs are not going down, operational costs are not going down. What that naturally makes you do on the contract level is if you're a contingency based agency, you're going to raise your rate and you can price yourself out of the market. Well, if you're able to offer a stellar service with an AI, you can reduce your rate and still produce, enough ROI to keep you profitable. And so if costs keep rising and you don't adopt something as efficient as AI, you're going to end up pricing yourself out of the market with your contingency rate. The other comment I wanted to make is with employee ramp up time, we actually had to expand our probationary period for our employees at one time because of the amount of information they needed to understand and contextualize and accurately represent to consumers. that's kind of cut our probationary period back with the adoption of AI, because we don't have that worry anymore. We don't have a person who may have never had collection experience or little collection experience worrying about ramping them up to the process and worrying about them overstepping their bounds or forgetting to hit the mute button, things like that. So just, two follow-up comments there may be helpful for the audience.
Understood. No, and again, and it makes sense, right? And kind of how I want to, we've talked about cost savings. We talked about kind of the evolution and the history of IVRs and moving into AI, and how both of you kind of really kind of different portfolios and different backgrounds have really kind of ventured into AI and used it for different ways, right? How it's helped with different expansion, and ultimately again how AI just helps the day-to-day task. That you take for granted, right? And that you'd never have to worry about. It kind of puts some of those fears or worries in the back corner for a while, and allows you kind of progress and expand each and every day. So one thing here, we have about 8 minutes left. Any questions, please, from the audience, please just put them in the chat. I'll get to them then in the last 5 minutes. But the last thing I wanted to touch on was future of AI, right? As I mentioned, we've gone through a number of ways that AI has really helped the debt collection industry. But how else can we make it better, right? Obviously you can make the bot voice and the sound and its negotiation strategies as human and lifelike as you want. Especially as Wava pointed out with these new LLM stacks, it's pretty limitless as far as how pretty you can make the voice sound and
Right.
convince things of that nature. So what's the next step, right? One thing we pride ourselves here is data, right? It's the data side of it, the analytical side of it. So I'll let Wave talk about it first, and then Scott and Kris, if you want to give your kind of final thoughts on where you see the future of AI going, that'd be great. But Wave, my question to you is, you know, I feel like we're pretty data driven here, right? A lot of our reasoning behind why we make changes and improvements isn't just because it sounds great or it will sound pretty or anything of that. It's data driven, right? And we have a lot of data. We have a lot of clients. We have a lot of calls that are made on a daily basis. Um, do you feel that AI will start going down the path to predict consumer behavior, right? Will we be able to know when to call a specific type of consumer? Will we know to call them or send them a text or send them an email? Could we actually predict the behavior of the consumer and utilize not just our tool, but any AI tool in that way? Do you feel that that's where AI is going, that we could almost predictively determine when is the best time to contact the user, how to contact that user in order to receive a downstream payment, ultimately really kind of honing in on your cost efficiency, right? And now you don't have to waste time in any area. You can say, hey, we know when the best time is to do it with the highest probability for someone to pay. Ultimately, maybe even moving past what you've seen in the scene, which is high propensity to pay accounts and all these algorithms determining on a scale of, say, credit score and things of that nature, who should pay. Do you feel that AI can go down the direction of helping predict when should someone pay and when should we make a phone call or when we should send a text? Do you feel that's where AI is going?
Yeah. So in fact, yes, it is. I mean, if you think of it, with all the data that anyone has, like on which channel did which type of consumer respond, right? An intelligence platform can be built in, right? And you can think of it like there are multiple channels. There's a human channel, the foremost channel. There's a voice AI channel, SMS AI, email AI, even a web chat that you might have on your websites, right? All multiple channels which can be, utilized to drive payments downstream. Now, which approach or which channel or which sequence of channels is the best approach for a particular consumer, right? That's the question. And with data, we can have answers for this question. I mean, if you think of a persona might be what's the age of the debtor, what amount does he owe, right? What's the type of debt he is spending against, right? Which state of the country he is in, right? Based on few parameters, few metrics, you can define a persona, and that persona can have a journey defined. And let's say that persona should receive a voice call first and then should be pursued by a SMS. And voice plus SMS is the sweet spot for persona one. And maybe voice plus SMS and then again a voice, right, is a sweet spot for persona 2. So this kind of mapping can be done to find out the sweet spot of the journey. Journey means the sequence of channels to be utilized. And then, the approach can be taken, which will in fact also increase the consumer experience, if you think of it, right? A person who does not want to talk over phone, right, should not be bombarded with phone calls. Maybe one phone call and then maybe an SMS, or maybe no phone calls, maybe two SMS, and that consumer pays. So yes, with the intelligence available on the data that we have now, right, definitely we can find out the right channel and even the right approach to be taken in that channel for any type of consumer.
Understood. So yeah, Kris, Scott, I'll hand it to you guys for the final minutes here. Just your collective thoughts, right, on where do you see the future of AI going? Again, it doesn't have to be specific to Skit AI, but just in general, where do you see kind of the next steps for AI and where it's going to grow?
For our industry, for sure, at least in my thinking, uh, you were talking about which channels to use at what time, but also how to prioritize the debt, tying into a credit score and looking at a consumer's holistic, public profile and prioritizing that. So I just give you a file. I don't do the dirty work of prioritizing that on my side. I give it to you. You're plugged in, and you prioritize it for me. And so that would be a welcome. I don't know if you guys have that. If you do, I need to know about it. But
Yeah.
that would be a welcome addition, because obviously everything runs on credit. So I think that would be a wonderful future for AI.
I agree. Yeah, and like you said, I mean, being at the forefront of where we have so much data, yeah, I mean, it's possible, right? Now it's just making sure that it works properly.
Sure.
And that's our next step, right? Is can we start giving you these more predictive models? Can we start telling you, we obviously give advice on the bot and the bot journey, right? Hey, let's make a change here. Why don't we change this? Um, we've already done that to add more personalization to these calls, right? Now that you'll start seeing in these new LLM stacks that we've built, persona, how the person or how the bot is interacting with the consumer does change. If you actually listen to someone with X amount of debt versus another type of debt or age of debt, infliction, the voices are changing. It's like a human would speak differently to someone. So that stuff is actually happening. Now the next step is the data-driven portion, right? How can we help drive actual consumer behavior and inform you on that? That way you're making educated decisions on how to progress and move forward. So Kris, yeah, I'll hand it to you then for the last 2 minutes here. Where do you see the future of AI going, specifically for yourself or your business?
I sure hope we get to a point to where we're able to use it to analyze data better. Quite honestly, we just don't have, we're a pretty good sized organization. We're not huge, but pretty decent sized. And we just simply don't have the bandwidth to analyze all the data that we're able to collect and that's available to us. And AI is capable of accessing the whole internet of information and can analyze all that at one time, which a human just can't. You can have the best analyst in the world and they still have a finite amount of calculatory ability, to be able to do it and make it actionable for you. So I really hope that in the future there are tools available to help us even identify what tools we should be considering. They know our business as well as we do and can tell us, here's something that you're not looking at or you're not utilizing that's available to you that you may not have even considered. Or have you thought about using this tool differently than you currently do? I know that's a big ask, but my personality is very creative, and that's, I think I don't not only think outside the box, but really don't believe that there is a box to think within. So have a tendency to hope for a lot of things that could potentially happen. But to me, the sky's the limit. I think it's going to be able to do just about anything. And I also don't think it's going to completely replace people. I mean,
Mhm.
there is always going to be room for the human brain.
Yeah, no, I agree. One sentiment I've always preached to, again, every client and every organization that we work with, our goal is not necessarily to say, hey, let's replace your people, right? That's not really the goal. That's a portion, right? You might be able to limit some headcount here and there, but we want it to work hand in hand, right? How can it make your agent or your day-to-day life easier? That's really the point of AI. Yes, reduction of headcount will be a subset of that. It will occur in some areas, but these are probably areas that weren't as efficient as they could be anyway, right? Where there was an IVR years ago to this, they was replacing that anyway. But yeah, I mean, data is really the next component, right? These LLM models, again, you can go around, you can listen to a multitude of them. They all sound, it's scary, right? The human versus the bot. It's hard to distinguish. Is it a human? Is it a piece of AI technology? It's very difficult nowadays to distinguish that. So the next step is the data component of it, right? These bots are learning, and as Wavo said, what makes ours pretty unique is it learns with guardrails. Otherwise, you're going to have a bot that's, it's like iRobot, right? It's going to start thinking on its own and start doing, which you got to be very compliant. It's got to stay within a certain lane. But the data part for the humans, right, for you guys and for your organizations, that we do feel is one of the next steps, and something that AI and Skit.ai specifically could help with, right? It can start. We do not just thousands of calls for yourselves, but millions across multitude of agencies across the globe. So you can get a good idea of what's happening and what's working, and we could actually be true advisors to that to help both with our AI and both about your systems in place currently to make everyone more efficient. And that's ultimately where I see AI going to as well, right? It's going to be kind of this something, yes, it can run in the background efficiently and you don't have to really worry about it, to something that can overhaul your entire business to make it more efficient. So that's ultimately where I see it going. But I first wanted to say thank you guys. This was great. Again, I look up at the clock. I'm like, oh man, it's already 2 minutes past one. So I do appreciate it. Kris, Scott, this was really great. Like I said, whenever I got to look at the clock to kind of stop it is good. It means everything's very conversational. Answers are great. Um, Everyone on the call, thank you for any questions. If there's any questions, I know we'll get some after the presentation. Feel free. You'll have email contacts. You can share any kind of questions you may have. If you have any questions specific for Scott or Kris, they're really great. If you have anything specific, I can coordinate and I can send them questions if you have anything you might want answered. You also got access to the recording as well. But again, Kris, Scott, thank you guys for your time. Again, we truly do appreciate it here at Skit. So thank you guys for just taking the hour out of your time. I know a couple prep calls in between. So thank you guys. I know you guys are busy, so we do appreciate it.
Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Everybody.
Yeah,
Thank you.
of course. No, you guys were great. Thank you, Wave Up.
Thanks for
Thank you.
inviting us.
I will talk to you all soon. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone on call. And like you said, we'll get that material out to you. So enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.